Hi and welcome back to Awesome 5, your online youth and disability magazine. My name's Jade and today we're speaking to Tony Howe from the Disability Resource Centre. Tony, in terms of the Rugby World Cup and accessibility for people that need accessible considerations, are we ready? Is Auckland ready?
It's an interesting question. I believe that they're well on the track to being ready. Always there are going to be issues, I would imagine. A city this size, while not huge in comparison to relation to the world, it's still our biggest city. It's when you get all these overseas visitors in, it's going to swell considerably, and there's bound to be some issues that will come along the way. But from what I can see, and the attitude and the intention of those involved, access is certainly high on the priority list, not just for people that we might term those with disability, but also the wider audience of everyone. Nice.
I understand you're involved with the barrier-free program. Can you tell us what barrier-free is?
Yeah, barrier-free is basically it's a compliance audit based around the accessibility requirements for specifically the New Zealand Standard 4121/2001, and that speaks around the ability to access public buildings. So if you've got a new building going up, or you've got a pre-existing building being modified, and they have to go to council for consent. To gain that full consent, you must have met the compliance around accessibility. And so a barrier-free auditor will either give advice or go and do an on-site assessment. They'd issue a report around that compliance, and based on that report being a positive one, then the operator would then be issued compliance from council.
So I hear that you've done some auditing around the North Harbour Stadium. Could you tell us about some of the things that you found and what people can expect from North Harbour Stadium?
Sure. Firstly, what they can expect from North Harbour is an excellent attitude. You get there, and of course, you've got an environment that wasn't set up for people with disabilities. Certainly, when it was first built, it was some consideration was given to it. They took on board areas around signage, around the seating layouts, around being inclusive of people that come to assist the disabled visitor. They looked at the parking issues, and it took that back even a step further with the volume of people they're expecting, right back to the transportation centre where all the buses drop off, through to the extended car parking at the Albany shopping centre, and then they were looking at ways that they might actually be able to provide loan equipment on the day to get people from those further reaches to the stadium itself. They've also looked at seating options and provided a varied range of seating options, whether it's inside or outside, just to give people a choice option, I suppose. The internal ones have got room. You can either go out on the balconies, and they would possibly, out of the 3 balcony views, you might have 12 to 20 plus helpers. Doesn't sound a lot, but just back a little bit more within the internal space is like the large sort of come mix, come meet areas, which have obviously got the hospitality like the bar and the food, and we've got screens set up. So if you want to be there for soak up the atmosphere, but you don't want to be outside in the cold September weather, you can go inside. But if you're brave, you're hardy, you don't mind being underneath the stands or out in the open on the opposite side, they can probably seat another 20 to 30 there within the arranged areas, but they've also opened up part of the concourse now, which is the walk railings, and and you can probably stack another 50 people there with no one sitting in front, and they'll have a great view of the whole area. So they've kind of factored in, well, we might get, you know, between say 20 and 100, but what if we've got between 100 and 300, you know, people with mobility issues. So they've kind of factored in the need to have other options.
Are we there in terms of getting patrons and visitors and tourists to stadiums, specifically North Harbour for our interviews?
Yeah, North Harbour is going to be interesting for public transport. I caught the bus purposely from Britomart. Worked fine, but it could only take 2 wheelchairs. So a third wheelchair and you're parking in the aisle. You may not even get on, to be honest. The biggest trouble is encouraging the bus driver to get down and lower the ramp. Outside of the bus that comes down to mobility transport, they've got good drop-off pickup arranged around that access parking. There seems to be quite a few operators that are mobility transport operators that are gearing themselves up for those days. So I think that is going to be the best way for people to get in that aren't self-driving. Getting from the transport centre down to the fan zone firstly and then across to the stadium is going to be pretty good because it's mostly downhill. Getting back up, maybe a bit of a challenge on some of those windy Albany days. Spending, I suppose it depends how long you stay at the fan zone and how convivial you get.
Can we talk about the fan zone? What can you tell me about some of the features there that are going to be amazing for disabled people?
Obviously, the Pacific Lakes area, which is where the fan zone is going to be, it's a wide open expanse. The lakes themselves, I know they've got plans for having a floating pontoon with a large screen on there for one side of it, and then there'll be a stage with another large screen on the opposite side. Because it's a reasonably flat environment, they're going to make access parking on the roads that surround Civic Lake, excluding the top part up by Howe Mall itself, because they'll have to allow for the emergency vehicles and such. But it's a reasonably flattish environment. They're looking at some matting type environment material to go over some of the grass to make it more firm for people to get across. They're looking at including a bit more temporary seating so that people don't have to go over large areas without being able to sit down and have a break. I know that they're thinking of a grandstand type seating for within that environment. So some that are a little bit more mobility able are able to get up on that seating to get make sure they're looking over the top of the heads and that. But with the big screens out there, and they're really looking at a sort of a festival type occasion, I'd say that's going to be quite a bit of fun. The mall obviously will support that with its hospitality as well. And I know that the fan zone is looking to include the mall with its in its thinking, but it really, the whole fan zone itself is going to be a standalone area. You won't have to leave there, to go to the toilet or to access food or whatever else you need.
Tony, if I was to ask you to summarise accessibility for the Rugby World Cup, thinking about Auckland as a whole, what would you say to the people of YouTube?
Don't be scared of Rugby World Cup. Get out there, get involved, plan it a little bit, and part of the planning is around looking at that information, searching it out on the websites. Certainly the major websites have got a lot of this information on there. And as they say, if you're going to go a little early. Make sure that you get the best ride-in, the best seats when you're there, make sure that you get the best posse, and that means going early.
Tony, thanks so much for your time today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Jay.
That'll do it for another episode of Awesome 5 for this week. Now, you may have heard about the Auckland City rail fail. Are you going to games? Have you been to them? We want to know your experiences. Leave them in the comment section of our Facebook page. That's all from me. Stay awesome, New Zealand.